Hello and welcome to Warblog. Today we're looking at Operation Amarillo, or the Phu Loi Battalion encounter, which was part of Operation Amarillo, Vietnam, 1966. Hang on. So that was just 1 year before this operation. So I don't want to get too bogged down in the details because I'm not brilliant on the details. Essentially, there's a couple of artillery bases here that they've set up and they're patrolling. There's some units down here doing road clearance. There's other units all around. Elements of this, it's not the full company, but I can't really split the companies up, or I don't really want to. They basically sort of wander around, and I think they go a bit further. They're described as going about 5 kilometers west of Artillery Base 1, and that's about 3. So they seem to have sort of got over here, and it's not really clear where they are. I put them down here first, but now I've put them there, which is LZ Blue, Landing Zone Blue. But essentially, they patrol and then they sort of wake up the next day in the sort of jungle scrub, so to speak, to find themselves in a massive Viet Cong base. And then they get attacked by elements of a Phu Loi Battalion company, sort of Phu Loi Battalion sort of here. They also have the C-62 company, which is a local company, local Viet Cong company. And so that's where we start off, basically. And then from there it just gets incredibly complicated with lots more units being brought into play. The commanders decide that they want to they want to engage. Usually the Viet Cong would run away, but in this case they wanted to hold their ground as well. So, and I've read the article through a couple of times, and it's pretty difficult to understand exactly what's happening, just because there's so many different names for regiments and commanders, and it's pretty involved for what I want to do. The learning curve is a bit steep, but anyway, I won't worry too much about that. But basically, from what I've gathered, first off, they've got some units down here that are on road clearance, so they then say, okay, well, you're going to come into play. There are other elements of this company, which is the 2nd Division, 1st of the 2nd Battalion, Company C. And they're sort of around here somewhere too, and they get sort of they come from down here, so they're brought in. They do some airlifts. So you've got LZ, and that's the 1st 16th and the 2nd 28th. So that's the 1st Battalion of the 16th Division, the 2nd Battalion of the 28th Division. They come in company sort of numbers. At these two, now they're only airlifts, so you can put them wherever you want, but that's basically where they sort of come in around here. So that's for that sort of designation. And so essentially you can see what's what. So we've got the 2 artillery bases, we've got the 2nd, which starts on in play, as you can see, and on turn 2 we get the 26th. And to be quite honest, I'm not sure whether that's sort of entirely accurate, but they sort of come on at a particular location. They are doing road clearance down here, so they're there, and there. They're basically somewhere around here, so they come on turn 2 they're sort of saying, well, stop road clearance and go and help these guys. And then you've got the 16th, and now they come on turn 4, and I don't know how they get on. I wonder how they get on. They suddenly appear by magic. And then you've got the cavalry. Then you've got the 4th Cavalry, and they basically come on various locations at differing times. So it's not specific, but they've got 6, 7, and 8, and they're basically mechanised infantry, and so they come on from there, up here, and down here. I should have a map here. That's what we were looking at. Looking at the 16th. Where do they come on? First, the 16th. Yeah, the 16th essentially are. That's why I'm a bit confused, because I thought I'd moved the air mobile over. The 16th is here. First to 16th, so they're air mobile. So we've covered this 26th, 16th, the 4th. The second is the remainder of this. So that's the first. That's company C of the second. So we get A and B, and they come on sort of here and here. And then finally you get the 28th. Now, when you read the article, when you read the sort of the thing through, and I maybe I should put the reference in, but I've got it's what is it? It's a PDF, Stemming the Tide. It's quite a famous. Well, I wouldn't say it's famous, but it's sort of. I keep coming across it as referenced, basically because it's a free online book, and I've got it on my tablet. So whenever I got a bit of moment, tablet-y time, that's when I go a Vietnam one and just jump in somewhere. But tablets are pretty crap at figuring out where you are in the tablet, and it's actually a PDF, and it takes like a couple of minutes to load every page, so you can't just flip through the pages. Anyway, that's all irrelevant. But what I'm sort of saying is there's a tremendous amount of detail. So, for example, now they're talking about, this, a platoon from this company did this, and then there was sort of like, this particular action, and a captain, was shot dead, and then they sort of had to do this and they do that. It's quite involved, much lower level than the than sort of company level. So, reflecting all the details. So, for example, to start off with. This is only two sections. I don't think they're squads or platoons. 2 sections of the company C. The other one is actually down here, and they start to come down here, and then they get bogged down, and it's all quite complex. So it's a bit of a just sort of a collage of the action, to give you a sort of, a working point to actually look at this particular scenario. But it is interesting, mainly because the Viet Cong have held their ground. It's also interesting because I spent another 7 minutes just talking. So we're going to the play mode, and perhaps I should have the Viet Cong going first. So let me end that turn. So now it's the Viet Cong, and they've got the option to attack, which is what they're doing. Now, we've got a lot of mortars, so I should probably tone these down, because they're already at 5.5. Okay, so that was quite incredible, really, because they are now probably on 7.5 depressions, so they've been hammered. Now, one of the things that's not so much unique with the Vietnam War, but it's so heavily documented, which is unusual for any sort of military other than the Second World War sort of period, modern period. But the point is, it's quite hard to sort of, when it's so heavily documented, it's quite hard to sort of create a game that's true to the historic timeline, and at the same time, for example, we could just bring all these units down and surround them, and we could have destroyed that unit. And so playing it with what I call the sort of a historic, it's not empathy. Basically, when you're playing with an intention to keep the gameplay historic, as opposed to do things that are only hex focused. So we're actually going to sort of hold this ground. Now, these are mortars. They're actually artillery units, but I'm calling them mortars, and I gave them 5s because I wanted to make them, because otherwise, what happened there, we very easily almost destroyed that company, and all we did was fire some mortars and attack them with these 2 units, and it was really I would say good fortune. I mean, they had a 25% chance of routing there, which is not too small. So it would have been a shame if they'd routed. But essentially, they didn't get trunched on there at the first sort of time, so that's probably not too bad. But what happened there was, could have very easily just destroyed that, and as soon as the rest of these other units come on, I think it'll be the same thing. So I'm not going to actually do any movement with any of this now, although I don't think they've got much more movement. I've got one there, so I'm not going to be able to do another attack on that. And I don't want to move all of this out, so we'll do the end of that turn. So now it's the United States' turn. Now, again, we could move all these units out. So what they're actually doing is sort of hunkering down. Now they're in this sort of paddy field now. So I'm not going to do that. And I'm not going to follow up with this. But what we do now have is the 26. So what I'm trying to sort of get to really is the sort of the way the battle sort of patterns out. So then we've got these units so actually on road clearance, so now they can come in and start doing things. So bringing this back in, we should now be at least a little, well, we're down to 6.5 depression, so they're pretty much knackered. But now we've got these companies over here that can actually start to do things. So let's just see how far we can get. Okay, well, I'm going to sort of move them like that to sort of at least try and keep them together in some sort of formation. That's all we're going to do there. I'm not going to push any of this stuff out. They've gone down and they're now on 5.5, but they're not going to get any better than that. So at least we can check on that, make sure that's not happening. So that's the it's now the US second turn, so we're going to start moving these in again a little further. So now I've got this nice line coming in here from this front. One thing I haven't done there is actually do the artillery, so we could be doing artillery on these units, which might have had an effect. I'm going to tone these down. I think that had too much of an effect on the first turn on that. And they'll be able to destroy anything that comes anywhere near them. So, especially in comparison to, I have actually deliberately for that reason turned these ones down, because I didn't want them, because they're so far away, the Viet Cong will never be able to do anything against them. So they've only got a firepower of 2, but they've got a range of 11. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So they can get everything here. So we can, but it's quite light. So maybe these mortars should be just 113s. I think I'll do that actually. So moving swiftly on. So it's now the Viet Cong move again. Now I'm not going to do anything next. We've only got a minute and a half. So I'm just going to try and, now we've got our the 16th Division, the 1st Battalion, the 16th, A, B and C, and as I said, they come on here, probably not going to get much further than this, but let's just see what we can do. So we're committing that air insertion. And they do the same over here, but that happens a lot later. I'm not sure when they come on. I think they're coming in a bit early, but essentially what you can start to develop here is a growing force of the US troops that will, bit by bit, be able to, attack this. We've got 30 seconds left, so other than the artillery being, the mortars being a little powerful, I did give them 3 range to reflect that they are mortars. But I think should be quite an interesting scenario to see how it sort of pans out, against the historic narrative, etc., etc. So I hope that interests you. If you think, oh, well, obviously I'll make some little changes here, but you might want to play it yourself.